Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over the first new update of Fortnite Season 9, Update 9.01. Ever since the drum gun was added into the game a few weeks ago, people have been really upset about the state of Fortnite. Then, Epic decided to remove the pump at the beginning of the new season, and that only made things worse. It felt like there hadn't been a really awesome update for at least the last 1 to 2 months, so Fortnite needed one in the worst way. And let me just tell you, an awesome update is exactly what 9.01 is. This is the first update in a while where I honestly think every single change they made was an overly positive one. We got a brand new weapon that's actually very unique and interesting, major changes to the biggest enablers of the spray and pray meta, a nerf to ballers, and some other important quality of life changes as well. Now, there is some debate on exactly how impactful some of these positive changes are going to be, but you'll understand what I mean by that once we get to it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start this video off by talking about what's probably the most important change in the whole update. Like I've mentioned in previous videos about Season 9, the drum gun was simply an incredibly overpowered weapon. It has absolutely dominated Fortnite as a whole since it was brought back due to the unvaulting event a few weeks ago, and when the pump shotgun was removed, the problem only got significantly worse. It had by far the highest DPS of any SMG in the game, while also having by far the largest clip size as well. The weapon was simply a recipe for disaster from the very beginning. So after a few weeks of utter domination, Epic finally decided to step in and give us a considerable nerf to the weapon in Update 9.01. The blue drum gun had its base damage reduced from 27 damage per shot down to 23 damage per shot, and the green drum gun had its base damage reduced from 26 damage per shot to 22 damage per shot. Another cool thing about this update is that Epic put a short little explanation for each change they made directly in the patch notes. I believe this is the first time they've ever done that, so here's what they had to say about the drum gun nerf. Since its unvaulting, the drum gun's effectiveness has been slightly higher than we wanted. This change should reduce its combat effectiveness while still retaining its flavor. So this is actually a really considerable damage nerf. I was scared they were going to drop the damage by 1 or 2 and then pretend all was good, but in reality that would have done almost nothing. A 4 damage nerf on the other hand is very different. So let's quickly revisit the stats between the post-nerf drum gun and the silenced SMGs. So since the only thing that changed is damage, we really only are concerned about the change in damage per second. The drum gun still has a 20-shot larger magazine size, they still have the same rate of fire, they still have nearly identical structure damage, and the suppressed SMGs still reload about a second faster. So with that in mind, the post-nerf green drum gun does 198 DPS, and the post-nerf blue drum gun does 207 DPS. For both rarities, that's a whopping 36 DPS decrease from before the nerf. So compare that to the silenced SMGs, where the white version has a DPS of 198, the green version has a DPS of 207, and the blue version has a DPS of 216. So now, even though the silenced SMG has a much smaller clip size, it does have a slight advantage in terms of DPS. So here are my general thoughts on what this drum gun nerf means for the game as a whole. Even though the nerf was considerable, and it's no longer an absolute no-brainer to pick the drum gun every single time, I still think it's going to be the best SMG option, and maybe even the best close-range option period, even over the 2 shotguns. At the end of the day, the weapon still has a 50-shot magazine size, it still does a ton of structure damage, and it still has a pretty high overall DPS. I think the thing people complain about most with the drum gun is how good it is at spraying down structures when you try to build to counter it. And this damage nerf really didn't change that at all. Plus, the thing that's always worth noting about damage nerfs in general is that in a lot of scenarios, it doesn't actually change the amount of bullets needed to kill a player. So again, I want to make it abundantly clear that I do think this was a really good and really considerable nerf. However, the problem is the fact that the drum gun was so unbelievably OP in the first place, that even with this really solid damage nerf, it's still an incredibly powerful weapon, and one that's almost impossible to counter in a lot of situations. Speaking of the SMG category, you may be wondering why I only compared the drum gun to the suppressed SMGs and didn't mention the compact SMGs. Well, that's because both versions of the compact SMG were vaulted in this update. The explanation Epic gave for the change is fairly straightforward. They said, due to the recent addition of the drum gun and the brand new tactical assault rifle, we wanted to reduce the availability of high rate of fire weapons. So that's a change that I don't think anyone is really going to disagree with. I don't think the compact SMG was overpowered by any means, but it just felt like a weapon that didn't really have a distinct purpose. If you wanted an SMG with a huge clip size that was great at spraying, you would take the drum gun. If you wanted an SMG with a little more precision and damage but less sprayability, you would take the suppressed SMG. The compact kinda awkwardly fell in between the other two options, so I don't think anyone will miss it too much. And like Epic said, there's already enough high rate of fire weapons in the game as is. So the weapon that was mentioned in that explanation about the compact SMG is the tactical assault rifle, which is obviously the new weapon that was added in Update 9.01. It's actually a really interesting and unique weapon, so here's the basic details from the patch notes that give you a brief description of it. It's a fully automatic weapon with a 30-shot magazine size, available in blue, purple, and gold rarity. The blue version does 22 base damage per shot, the purple version does 23, and the gold version does 24, with all versions having a 1.75 headshot multiplier. The weapon has a tight spread in close quarters, but is less effective at long range when compared to the other assault rifles. Although I think this is a really cool idea for a weapon, I just don't think they gave it enough power. It basically isn't as good as the other SMG options at close range, and it isn't as good as the other AR options at medium or long range. I think the biggest value it provides is that it would potentially open up an inventory spot for you. You could maybe get away with running this weapon and a shotgun, and then having 3 other inventory spots for healing, mobility, explosives, or a sniper rifle. But other than maybe some endgame situations and competitive matches, I just don't think the weapon is good enough to do that right now. I think with a decent little buff though, that's when things could get really interesting. Moving on, another awesome change from Update 9.01 was the 2 changes to slipstreams. First off, slipstreams no longer block building, and this is Epic's explanation for that. Trying to build to get into a slipstream should be an easy and intuitive experience. We noticed some cases where players would build up to the slipstream, but due to build restrictions would take a leap of faith and not make the jump. This should make getting into a slipstream much easier. Not too much to say here other than this is a perfect change. Slipstreams were actually really annoying to engage with, and based on my experience playing after this update, it's been totally fixed now. Then you also have the new change where slipstreams are disabled after Storm Phase 5. Epic says, we've seen a number of cases where slipstreams caused issues during late game circles, primarily around getting pulled into the storm unexpectedly. Since the value of slipstream mobility is limited in those scenarios, we felt it's better to simply disable them. Slipstreams in endgame circles were incredibly annoying and borderline game ruining, so again, pretty much a perfect change here. And the final big ticket item from Update 9.01 was a slight nerf to Ballers, lowering the total health of the vehicle from 200 to 150. I think this is another really good change, but I still expect them to be used a ton at the highest level of competitive play. When there's 10 plus balls all grouped together in the final circles, if you wouldn't shoot them at 200 health each, you probably still won't shoot them at 150 health each. I think ballers are totally fine in public matches, but I think the solution for competitive play is to vault them all together. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on any of the changes in Update 9.01? Do you think the drum gun nerf did enough? Have you tried the new tactical assault rifle? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.